Hello, everybody. It is Thursday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, assistant sports editor for multimedia at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Joined for our weekly is Zeise's Right Chat by Paul Zeise of the Post-Gazette. We're talking Pirates and Steelers today, comparing those two teams to each other a little bit based on a discussion that was had on Sirius XM radio this week. Paul, how are you? I'm excited to get into it.
I'm good. How are you? Everything good?
Yes, absolutely. It's about to get real hot here in Pittsburgh for those of you who are not in the area. I am not a fan of heat. I'd much rather it be 0 degrees than 100, so I'm not looking forward to it. But today it's still pretty nice. So let's move forward, Paul. The topic's going to be, are the Pirates or Steelers closer to winning in the playoffs? Adam Shine of Mad Dog Sports Radio on Sirius XM kind of made a pretty passionate argument that the Pirates are going to be the team that enjoys particularly playoff success sooner than the Steelers are. So I'm excited to get into it. I think we both have some major opinions on that. Before we do, just want to thank our primary sponsor for this episode of the podcast, Pella Windows and Doors. There's no better place to get new windows and doors installed in your home than Pella, who can help you save on energy costs year-round. Schedule a free in-home consultation with your local Pella Windows and Doors to find the right product for your home and budget. Give them a call at 866-593-1560 to discuss your project further. That's 866-593-1560 to get started planning on your new windows and doors installation with Pella Windows and Doors of Pittsburgh. Paul, I teased it before the ad break there, but I'll just let you go first, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts. Do you think the Steelers or the Pirates are closer to success in the playoffs, considering they're both kind of muddled around the 500 mark in their respective sports right now? The Steelers a little bit ahead of where the Pirates are record-wise, but the Pirates have some pretty exciting young players that seem to finally be putting things together. What's your view of the situation?
Well, I mean, I actually agree with the idea that the Pirates are probably closer to the idea of being able to win in the playoffs. But the question is, can they get to the playoffs? I mean, I understand completely what Adam Shine and these, a lot of people are saying. If you get to the playoffs and you've got Skenes and you got Jones and you got Mitch Keller, that combination 1, 2, 3 is going to be really difficult for other teams to handle. So if you can throw, for instance, in a wild card situation, Jones and then, or Skenes and then Jones, then you come back in the NLDS and you've got, Keller, Skenes, and Jones. I mean, those you have to win how many games? 3? Three?
I think you only have to win 2 games to win the wild card series.
Oh, that's right. 2 to win the wild card. To win what? Is it best of 5 in the NLDS?
Yeah, that's best of 5 in the division series.
So it's 5, and then you got to win 4. That's 9. I mean, 13 games is what it takes to win the World Series, essentially. And assuming you're a wild card. And I'm saying, if you can throw your 3 best pitchers out there for 10 or 11 out of those 13, I mean, you've got a huge advantage. So when it comes to I really truly believe what we saw 2 nights ago against the Cardinals is the kind of game that you would see in the playoffs, and assuming, or if Bednar and Chapman and Holderman are still, if they're pitching really well in September, I absolutely can see the argument that I like their chances once they get to the playoffs better than the Steelers. The question is, can they make the playoffs? And in order for them to make the playoffs, they're going to have to make some moves to get some players in here to get them over the top. I don't know that they're going to do that. And I don't think they're good enough right now to make the playoffs. I think what you're going to see with this team is what you've seen sort of this week, right? Sunday, they played a really bad game, almost a give. They just almost threw it away because, well, our bullpen is tired, so we're going to throw this guy named Heller out there. Then Tuesday they play, a really good game, but don't hit very well. And then last night, they leave a bunch of guys on base, and even though they got a good pitching performance, they lost. They're going to be inconsistent, and while they're on a little bit of a spurt, they had a nice homestand. That there's going to be a lose 6 out of 8 type thing coming, despite their pitching, unless they get better. So it's a complicated answer. It's a long answer, but and some might think it's a cop-out answer. But I think built to win in the playoffs, yes, the Pirates are in a better position than the Steelers because, again, the Steelers are going to have to go through any one of about 4 or 5 superstar, real high-level quarterbacks that are better than the guys they have. So I would say, yes, they are built to win in the playoffs more than the Steelers, but I think the Steelers are much better equipped to make the playoffs.
Yeah, that was going to be my exact second question. Is that's how I view it too. That if you get the Pirates in the postseason, I think we saw with the Diamondbacks last season, they won 84 games in the regular season, and then they went off, made the World Series. I could see the Pirates getting there that way. It's much harder for me to envision the Steelers' path to a Super Bowl. Even 2000, people will point out the Steelers won the 2005 Super Bowl as the last seed into the playoffs. But I think we all know that team had how many Hall of Famers on it. It was good. It was injured for a lot of that season. So I think the notion that team was like 6th seed level talented, like we think this current team is kind of a misnomer. I do think that the Steelers have more overall talent, Paul. I think you look on the defensive side of the ball, it might be the best defense they've had. They've got some potential playmakers in this offense if you can straighten out the play calling. So I find it interesting because I listened to your, Joe's, and Mark Cavalli's exchange yesterday on The Fan, where you were basically asking Mark the value of being able to get to the postseason. But I think I'd make this argument that is the Steelers. The value of the Steelers' consistency is that they do have the ability to get to the playoffs and then do something to surprise us all once they get there, where the Pirates are just consistently incomplete. And there is, I'm not trying to like defend Mike Tomlin too much here for his playoff record and the no playoff wins in 7 years, but isn't kind of at the crux of this conversation an appreciation of the consistency that Mike Tomlin brings to the table?
Yeah, but my point is, let's look at Matt LaFleur, okay? I think he's 6 years. He had, I think, 3 years where he won 13 games. He's won 3 or 4 playoff games in that time. He's, won the division 3 or 4 times or whatever it's been. But one of those 6 years, he was 8-9 instead of 9-8. Would you take his last 6 years over Mike Tomlin's?
No, I agree with you on this. I agree with you on this, Paul, for sure.
That's my only point about this whole thing about non-losing seasons is I look at it and say, it's great, but in my mind, it's meaningless. So if Matt LaFleur had, they had Green Bay, I don't know what game they lost that they could have won, maybe they lost on a last-second field goal somewhere. So if that field goal goes out and they win and go 9-8 instead of 8-9 and still miss the play, it really matters to. That's all I'm saying is this whole, never had a losing season. I just think, or whatever. I just think it's way overdone because to me, I look at the body of work and I say in 7 years, it's great. You never had a losing season, but guess what? In 7 years, you're 0-5 in playoff games. So what are we talking about? But that was that whole. But you're right. I mean, getting there is something to be said for getting there. And you figure if they get there every year and give themselves a chance every year, sooner or later they're going to knock down the door and have a breakthrough. I'm glad you pointed out 2005. 2 things. Number one, that was a 6 seed, not the 7 seed, which is a little bit different. I mean, I think and 2, the injuries that team had in the middle of the season really kind of sidelined them. They probably should have won 3 or 4 more games than they actually did. And everybody kind of knew that, the Colts were the best team, allegedly. They were the best team, but everybody knew that the Steelers were probably right there among the, the second or the third best teams in the conference. And they proved it. So I think that getting there is important. I have no problem with, hey, there's something to be said about consistency, but if you don't win when you get there, eventually I ask, okay, what is getting you there getting you?
Yeah, no,
other than mediocre draft choices every year.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you on that, Paul, in terms of, it's kind of a separate conversation of should the Steelers be striving for more than that mentality-wise. And I think that's the big problem is that there's a big push in this town to be like, this is good enough, when I don't think that was necessarily true until the last 5 or 6 years where there hasn't been playoff success and trying to hang on to success that really isn't, up to the Steelers standard. The standard is the standard. That's what we hold them to on the show. We don't try to be negative. But the Steelers are one of the class organizations of the sport. If you let them, if you let the bar for them slip to 500 is fine. I don't think that's making people ultimately too happy in the end. Paul, wanted to ask if you're on the Arthur Smith hype train after his press conference this week. There's lots of people who were excited. I think we had 16,000 some views on his video on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel. Lots of positive comments about how he spoke to the media. I've heard lots of media members glowing about, how he's interacted with them this week as well. Did you hear things that you liked from Arthur Smith? And are you as excited as a lot of other people are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I like the hire from the standpoint of how he fits with what the Steelers want to do philosophically and what their skill sets is. I think that he's a good hire that way. One of the things that's happened to me, Adam, and I've spoken about this on my radio show quite often. I've gotten really jaded when I covered when I was a beat reporter for football for almost 20 years. Off-season noise to me is mostly noise. So I don't get all that excited like some people do at every new development because, and I've had a little fun with it on Twitter. I call it, spring football storyline number one. New coach comes in. He's 100 times better than the old guy. Everybody's in their best shape of their life and all this other stuff. So I think that Arthur Smith is an adult. And when I say an adult, I think he's a very qualified coach who knows what he's doing. And that's important. I think that clearly the last guy was not. Clearly the last guy was in way over his head for a lot of reasons, and we don't need to throw dirt on him. But this guy, to me, it sounds like he's got a really good sound plan and knows what he's doing and knows how to do it. And so to me, with the skill set the Steelers have and the way they want to play football, yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how this all looks. And also kind of interested to see if you can still win at a high level playing that kind of football.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's kind of my big question with this all is they never really had the playoff success in Tennessee that, would lend me to believe that they can kind of get the monkey off their back or certainly make a deep run. Maybe you win a game. Can you get to the Super Bowl playing this style of football? I think that remains to be seen. Paul, I want to ask you about his comments about Cordarrelle Patterson and including him in that backfield conversation with Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. Do you think Cordarrelle Patterson is going to be a real piece of that we're going to see 5-6 carries a game, anything like that? Or is he just going to be that maybe possibly special teams ace that you're able to kind of take advantage of with these new kickoff rules?
I mean, to me, I 5-6 carries a game, but could there be a few little situational things here and there that they find a reason to use him? But I would be shocked. I mean, I think he was brought here for one reason. And again, going back to my thesis about spring football, coach has to mention everybody in the room to keep everybody in the room happy, basically. And that's really, what you see in spring football. Guys that have no prayer of really being on the depth chart, they get talked about. So I would say no. I mean, I doubt he's going to figure that or factor that much into what they're doing. Might they have a few little packages here or there or a couple of specialized plays for him? Maybe. But if you're giving the ball to him, that's one less time you're giving it to Warren or Harris, and I'm not sure that that's really, a good plan.
Yeah, exactly. I think, especially those two guys bring value to the table. Taking them off the field, I kind of have a hard time imagining it. Maybe he's going to have some ideas where there's two running backs on the field at the same time. You're going to try to keep some defenses off balance that way. If that's the choice, and you have Najee Harris and Cordarrelle Patterson out there, or Jaylen Warren and Cordarrelle Patterson out there, sure, okay, let's see that. But I think any scenario where Cordarrelle Patterson's getting carries over those guys and is on the field by himself, I kind of have a hard time imagining. Paul, let's get into some Pirates. Before we do, just want to thank another sponsor, Pitt Johnstown. It's a Pitt quality education with up-close and personal learning. A top-ranked Northeast public college by U.S. News and World Report. Generous scholarships and financial aid are available located on 655 picturesque acres with easy access to the city center, including shopping and dining. It's a vibrant campus life with an active D2 athlete community. Check out Pitt Johnstown today. Paul, I want to get your thoughts on this Paul Skenes All-Star debate. Joe Starkey wrote a column, your colleague at The Fan as well, arguing why Paul Skenes belongs in the All-Star game, why it would be a mistake to leave him out the way they did Steven Strasburg in 2010. I just want to throw this little wrinkle into the debate, though. Is there any scenario where Jared Jones is less deserving of an All-Star nod than Paul Skenes, considering he's been doing this for the whole season? It's not Paul Skenes' fault that he didn't get called up till May, but I kind of look at Jared Jones as he should probably be first in line, just because he's made more starts. He's been a member of this rotation from the start. That's not, do I think Paul Skenes is going to be the better pitcher over the long run? Absolutely. But Jared Jones has done it, and I'd hate to see Paul Skenes kind of get the nod just for the hype when you have another solid pitcher who's been earning it for the entire season.
Well, I mean, I think Mitch Keller probably is the most deserving out of them all. But I think at the end of the day, if Paul Skenes has 5 or 6 more starts like he's had, the All-Star game is a popularity contest. It's not, again, I've separated. It's different than the Caitlin Clark Olympic team debate, because the Olympic team, you're actually playing to win. You're actually playing a competition and you want to win. Now, our U.S. women's team is so far better than everybody else. Doesn't matter who the 12th player is. So there's that argument. But realistically, you could say, well, you need to put the 12 best guys out there. In the All-Star game, there's always been a fan element to it. Who do the fans want to see? That's why there's voting. That's why, every year there's outrage because the fans voted for, someone who's very popular, who's not having a great year, and yet there's somebody that's less popular who, well, it's because it's a game for the fans. And I think that element, to me, if Paul Skenes has 4, 5, 6 more good starts, and shows that he's at least worthy by numbers of being in the All-Star game, if I'm the manager, I'm picking him. And I'm picking him because, to me, the entire point of what we're doing is to try and get eyeballs on the TV set. And if I can send a guy out there in the 3rd inning or even in the 1st inning or whatever, and he's going to throw, 8 or 9 100-mile-an-hour pitches and blow away some of the best hitters in the game, I want to see that.
Yeah, I want to see it too. And it's the more Paul Skenes you can get on your television, I'm certainly not going to complain. It's just if the Pirates didn't have another rookie pitcher who was having a great season as well, I think it'd be a little bit easier to say, he should be in there regardless of whether he's made fewer starts. I think it's worth praising Jared Jones as well. Paul, let me ask you this about Paul Skenes' start this week. We saw him throw 103 pitches against the Cardinals. Jason Mackey, our sports columnist and kind of Pirates consigliere, still says he doesn't think there's going to be a whole lot of restriction on Paul Skenes the rest of the way because of the way the Pirates handled him up front. I guess this is a twofold question. Do you look at how the Pirates handled Paul Skenes and say that was the right way to set him up for success later in the season? And do you really think that the gloves are kind of off him now and he can every time they run him out there, he's going to get his 100 pitches unless he's really struggling?
I think there's no chance. I don't think the gloves are off at any means at all. I think he's going to get a little bit more leeway here, but the reality is they don't want to have to shut him down in August and September. So trust me, they're going to play games. They're going to have one like some pitch counts and inning counts. And I'll give you a great example. How about on Sunday when you have a short bullpen and before the game, you basically let everybody know Jared Jones is on a very strict pitch count today because he went, 90 some pitches or whatever it was, the pitch, the inning, the game before. There's no chance that Paul Skenes is going to be allowed to go out there and throw 100 pitches every night. It's just not going to happen. And it won't shock me if even in like August, they play the, skip a start game they play the let's bring a sixth starter up for a spot start to move him and Jared Jones' starts a little bit further apart. That's just what they're going to do. That's what the plan has been. I do the Derek Shelton show, and we ask him about it every single week on the Derek Shelton show, and he basically says that, they're monitoring every single thing that Paul Skenes does. They have an overall plan, but they've got to let some things play out. But they definitely have a plan of, err a little bit on the side of caution if it comes to, him, his pitch counts, his inning counts, all that stuff. So, no, I think there's no chance this guy is going to come out and all of a sudden be Nolan Ryan and, just be able to, pitch as long as he wants every single night.
I also wanted to get your thoughts on Bailey Falter. Not great last night. We're recording this on Thursday morning against the Cardinals. I think he's going to be a real pivot point for this team, Paul, of whether they're going to be able to make it to the playoffs or not. If you have Skenes, Jones, Mitch Keller going 3 nights a week, you're going to have a pretty decent chance to win all 3 nights, but maybe you go 2-1 in those games in an average week. And then the question becomes, what are you going to do on the back end? Bailey Falter's been good to this point. Do you worry? Do you believe in him yet? I guess is my question. To kind of be that solid fourth guy that gives you a chance to go 3-1 across those 4 starters, or are you concerned about him given the way last night went?
No, I think he's been pretty good, and even last night. I mean, if the Pirates get a few key hits, they have a chance to win the game. It's not like he got blasted for 10 runs and they were out of the game. I think he's got a chance to be a very, very, very solid, option as your 4th starter with this team. And that's, to me, when he, outside of his first start, every time I'm pretty sure he's taken them out, he at least gives you a really a legitimate chance to win the game, which is what you want from your 4th starter. And I think he's been pretty good. I became a believer in him after about 5 or 6 starts. Like, hey, this guy's shown that he can do it. And I don't think that just because he had 1 start where he was a little bit less than that doesn't change the way I look at it. He's the 4th starter. I think they're in pretty good place with him.
Paul, I wanted to get your thoughts on this as well. There's been some suggestion out of Toronto this week that, if things don't improve for the Blue Jays, that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. could be available at the trade deadline. He has 1 year of control after this one, so he wouldn't be a straight rental. When we look at that first base situation, is Vlad Guerrero Jr. the type of move you'd want the Pirates to make? I think on paper, a lot of people would say, well, you'd rather get more years of control. And I'd say, sure. But what's the point of this prospect depth if you're not going to try to go for it in such an obvious place of need, right? First base. The point people have been making is how long are you going to really be able to rely on having all 3 of these pitchers at their best, going at the same time before someone gets hurt, before, something happens? How many years are you going to have these guys pitching like this? Do you look at Vladimir Guerrero Jr. when you say you want to see them make moves? Is that the type of move you'd like to see them make?
Absolutely. That's the kind of thing they have to do. They don't have any choice. They need to go they need to make their lineup better. They need to make that position better. And so to me, I think that's obviously, to me, to go get that. And I still think they need to go get an outfielder. I'd make 2 moves. I know that's not popular, but I would make 2 moves. I'd get an outfielder and I'd get a first baseman. And I wouldn't care what I'm trading away, because you've got all this depth we hear about down in the minors. Well, what good is it doing if you're not going to use it? And some of these teams, we've seen the price for these guys is not nearly as high as is reported. From the standpoint of, great example. What did San Diego have to give up to get the back-to-back batting champion? They gave up like their 6th or 7th best prospect, their 9th best prospect, and their 14th best prospect. If I told you that, and I don't even know who that would be in the Pirates organization, if I told you, listen, to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr., it's going to take the 6th prospect, the 9th prospect, and the 13th or 14th prospect. If you don't do that deal, you should be fired.
Let me just throw some names out there, Paul. I'm going to look up the top prospects while you're talking. But off the top of my head, if I told you had to give up Bubba Chandler or Anthony Solometo to make that deal happen, are you doing it?
Both of them or one of them?
One of them.
One of them, absolutely. I even tell Toronto, take your pick. Absolutely. Pitching is not your issue here. The issue is you have no first baseman. You need guys that can hit. So I would have no problem. If you told me Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I'm going to give you Bubba Chandler and whoever is my 10th pick prospect and whoever is my 15th prospect. Yeah.
Well, let me interrupt you real quick. Bubba Chandler is the third best, and Anthony Solometo is the fourth. So they're a little bit higher than what you were suggesting.
So go with Bubba Chandler as third. Give me so maybe it only takes him and whoever the 10th best is. Him and whoever the 10th or 11th best. Two prospects. Go on.
Yeah, number 10 is Mike Burrows, interestingly. I think a lot of people had a lot of hype for him, but he's fallen as he's had to kind of navigate these injuries. I think a lot of people would not want to give up, especially two starting pitchers, and I think that'd be fair, but I think it's also true that, listen, if you're going to have Skenes, Jones, Keller, that's three slots in this rotation that you're pretty much hoping you got nailed down. Most years you're going to be able to go out and get a Martin Perez, Marco Gonzalez, those types of guys. They're going to be available. They're probably going to be – the Pirates almost always get at least one of those guys for the rotation, Paul. When they're good, when they're bad, they go out and get a veteran they feel that they can rehab. So that's usually going to be 4 rotation spots that you have nailed down for the next 4-5 years, especially considering this Mitch Keller extension. How much room is there even going to be in this rotation for some of those guys?
That's the point. Bailey Falter is still pre-arbitration, isn't he?
I think so.
I think he is. So you probably have him for 3 or 4 more years under control if you want him. You basically have 4 spots accounted for the next 4 years at least. So that's my point. You can go find a Martin Perez. You can go find a Marco Gonzalez. You can go find what was the old guy, Rich Hill. You can go find those guys to be your 5th starter. I'm just saying, I think that you've got an embarrassment of riches in pitching depth. Use some of it to go address the problem that you really have.
Yeah, I agree. We talk, sometimes with the Penguins, they go out and they make a deal for a guy who's got 1 year left. I think the Pirates are going, because of the way things have worked out and because they have not developed this farm system quite as well on the position player end, you're going to have to be willing to sacrifice some things to get those pieces. I'd also say, Paul, you can afford to sign Vlad Guerrero Jr. I think, you can make a push to have that one big contract on the books with the money you saved on Hayes and Reynolds and, even Mitch Keller, you got it a below rate deal. You can have one guy, with all the money they're making. So just because they trade for him for a year of control doesn't mean he should necessarily be out the door either. Paul, I'm going to get you out of here on this. Any thoughts on the Stanley Cup playoffs or Stanley Cup final of the NBA finals?
I said at the start that the Celtics would win in 5. I was wrong. They're going to win in 4. They were so much better than the Mavericks. It was easy to see. People talked about the big 2 but we talked about it on this show. The big 2 from the Mavericks, I might say, yeah, maybe they're a little better than the big 2 from the Celtics. But the next 6 guys on the court are all on the Celtics team, I think, in my mind. So it's nothing that has surprised me. Florida has just overwhelmed Edmonton. Florida has just smothered Edmonton. We talked about a contrast in styles. Florida is just really, really good, and their goalie is just that much better. The only thing that bothers me about both is that there was such a long layoff. It's kind of hard to follow when the games are on and where they are, and I sort of lost a little bit of interest in that week and a half off or whatever it was. So, but. Nothing really that we've seen is a surprise. I thought Florida would beat Edmonton for the reasons I just said. Deeper, better defensively, better goalie, more structured. It's, Edmonton hasn't been able to breathe. And the Celtics they're the best team in basketball. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear at this point. And yeah, Paul, I think we're seeing the folly of having the same network broadcasting both the NHL and the NBA. Because they had got to squeeze, I guess, some regular ABC programming in at some point, for the people who don't watch sports. So, it's just another, this is a conversation for a separate day. I want to, you know what, Paul, do you have time? I want to ask you this too.
No, I got to run.
Okay. Well, we're going to let Paul go. So we'll tease that for next time.
We'll do it next week. Yeah. No, I got to run out of here. So
yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us this week, Paul, everyone. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right. We'll see you, man.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.